Hello and welcome to Bibliophil's e-classroom. In this lecture, I am going to talk about MPLAD scheme. You might have heard about this scheme as it is in news recently, and it is really important for us to know about this scheme in greater detail. That is why through this lecture I shall let you know all the important facts pertaining to this scheme. I shall provide you an insight into what this scheme is all about. So first, let's look into why this scheme is in news.
आपको मालूम है अनेक सांसदों ने अपने सांसद निधि से कोविड के उपायों के लिए जितना भी काम चल रहा है उसके लिए 1-1 करोड़ रुपए देने की पहल की थी, लेकिन बाद में अनेक सांसदों का ये कहना था कि ये पूरी अगर व्यवस्था करनी है तो इसलिए MPLAD को अब 2 साल के लिए स्थगित किया जाएगा, यानी 2021 और 21-22, और हर सांसद के जो 2 वर्ष के सांसद निधि है वो 10-10 करोड़ रुपए वो भी देश के कंसोलिडेटेड फंड में जमा होंगे.
The Union Cabinet has approved the temporary suspension of the MPLAD scheme. Under this scheme, each MP of the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha of the Indian Parliament is provided with 5 crore of rupees every year in order to carry out developmental works in his or her constituencies. But this scheme is suspended for a period of 2 years now, that is for the financial year 2020-21 and 2021-22. And this suspension will translate to savings of around 7,900 crore rupees, which will be deposited to the Consolidated Fund of India, so that it can be spent on boosting the health infrastructure needed to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. The opposition has criticized the suspension of the MPLAD scheme because, according to the MPs of the opposition parties, MPLAD scheme was very crucial to fund developmental work at the grassroots and to sponsor emergency relief during the disasters such as the prevalent COVID-19. So in this context, let us have a more detailed discussion on the MPLAD scheme, including its background, features, as well as a critical analysis on the performance of this scheme. So firstly, what are the objectives of the scheme? See, MPLADs stands for Members of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme, and as the name itself indicates, its main objective is to promote local development in the respective constituencies of the MPs. It is a central sector scheme or centrally sponsored scheme, which means this scheme is entirely funded by the central government. This scheme was launched by P.V. Narasimha Rao government in the year 1993, and this scheme enables the members of the parliament to recommend developmental works in their constituencies with an emphasis on creating durable community assets based on locally felt needs. For example, roads, school buildings, etc. Recommendations for non-durable assets can also be made only under limited circumstances. Initially, this scheme was administered by the Ministry of Rural Development. But since 1994, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has been implementing this scheme. So this ministry is responsible for administering MPLAD scheme, and hence it is responsible for allocating and transferring the funds. And it is also responsible for reviewing the implementation and completion of the projects that are funded in the MPLAD scheme. So when the scheme was launched, the allocation for each MP was just a few lakh rupees per year. But slowly, the allocation was increased to 1 crore, 2 crore, and today the allocation for MPLAD scheme stands at 5 crore rupees per annum for each MP. Under this scheme, each MP has to recommend local developmental projects to the district collector, that is the district administration, which has to be taken up in their respective constituencies. All the elected and the nominated members of the Rajya Sabha as well as the Lok Sabha are eligible to receive the allocation of fund under this MPLAD scheme. See, in case of Lok Sabha MPs, their constituencies are well defined. So they are mandated to spend this amount on local development projects within their constituencies. But in case of Rajya Sabha MPs, their constituencies are not well defined because they are elected by the members of a state legislature. So Rajya Sabha members select one or more districts from the state they have been elected, and they have to use this money to fund the developmental projects within these selected districts. But in case of nominated members of Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, they do not have a constituency at all. So in this case, the nominated members have to select any one of the state in the country, and within this state, they can select one or more districts where they would like to fund their developmental projects under this MPLAD scheme. So these are the objectives of MPLAD scheme. Now let us look at some more features, the salient features of the MPLAD scheme. See, under MPLAD scheme, the MP has to understand the local needs of his constituencies, and for this, he can work with various trusts, societies, NGOs, and more importantly, he needs to interact with the citizens and promote a participatory approach in order to first identify the local needs of the population. Once the local needs are identified, then the MP has to work with the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, the state government, and most importantly, the district administration in order to make use of these funds. Usually, the development projects that are sponsored under the MPLAD scheme includes the construction of the local roads, provision of drinking water, providing better facilities in the local schools, local hospitals, as well as for providing emergency relief during the time of disaster. So once the local needs of the constituency has been identified, the MP will have to write a letter on his official letterhead to the district administration asking them to take up the projects that has been identified by making use of the funds under the MPLAD scheme. So subsequently, the district administration under the district collector will select an implementing agency and execute the project, and the funding of this project will come directly from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation through the MPLAD scheme. So as the project is being executed, the district administration will be responsible to report back to the central ministry on the implementation and completion of the project, and also of the utilization of the fund under this scheme will be reviewed by the Comptroller and the Auditor General, that is the CAG. So basically, the funds under the MPLADs are not directly available with the MP. The MP is only recommending a project based on the local needs to the district administration, and the funding for executing this project will come directly from the central ministry. So basically, the central ministry does not directly disburse the funds to the MP. Instead, it disburses this fund to the district administration. So the 5 crore rupees that is available per MP, per constituency, is released to the district administration in 2 installments of 2.5 crore rupees each. And this fund is non-lapsable in nature. That is, this fund which remains unutilized in a particular year, they get carried forward to the next year. So under this scheme, MPs have been mandated to ensure that every year at least 15% of the funds are spent on the areas inhabited by the SC population, that is scheduled caste population, and 7.5% of the funds should be spent on areas inhabited by the ST population, that is the scheduled tribes population. Then in order to promote and encourage participation of trusts, NGOs and societies, especially for the betterment of the people, up to 75 lakh rupees can be provided to these organizations under the MPLAD scheme. So then, as we discussed, the MPs will have to recommend only such projects which can create durable assets based on the local needs of the constituency. The MPs also have the option of converging these MPLAD funds with other government schemes such as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Khelo India, etc. Then the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has recently launched the One MP One Idea initiative in order to promote greater participation of the local people in the scheme. It is basically a competition which adopts a bottom-up approach and encourages the local people to identify the local problems and come up with local solutions that are innovative, which can be implemented in a sustainable manner, which can be scaled up. So under this competition, the local innovators in each constituency are recognized and given out cash award as well as a certificate of appreciation. So actually the One MP One Idea initiative is targeted to foster a grassroots bottom-up approach to innovation and development and to arrive at solutions for local problems which are sustainable and scalable. So these are the salient features of this MPLAD scheme. Now, let's look into the criticism against the move of the central government to suspend this scheme for 2 years. So what are the criticisms? After the center has passed an ordinance suspending all MPLADs funds until 2022, opposition members have hit back, saying that such centralization of power will prove to be detrimental for parliamentary democracy. Decentralized interventions are most effective when it comes to tackling disasters or epidemic. The decision to centralize these funds will immensely weaken the efforts of the state governments against COVID-19. With some states and districts more impacted by the coronavirus outbreak, MPLADs funds could have filled the gaps in relief work left by the central or the state government. The Congress party was critical of the government's decision, though some in the party have also welcomed it. Among the most vociferous critics was the three-time Thiruvananthapuram MP Shashi Tharoor, who had tweeted that pulling the MPLAD funds into the Consolidated Fund of India, which is run by the central government, is problematic. He has also opined in a series of tweets that an order to earmark all MPLAD funds spending for COVID-19 related measures would have been okay. MPLAD funds preserved the sense of direct responsibility for the well-being of the constituents. That is a hallmark of an Indian MP's work. Kerala Chief Minister Mr. Vijayant, who has also tweeted that the move to suspend the fund was anti-federal. He has said, states are entitled to MPLAD funds and the decision to centralize these funds will immensely weaken the efforts of the state governments against COVID-19. Decentralized interventions are most effective when it comes to tackling disasters or epidemics. The assistance provided by the center to the states for COVID-19 efforts are unequal and discriminatory in nature. Communist Party of India General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri has also tweeted that there were enough evidence that COVID-19 is best fought at the state and local level. By suspending MPLAD funds, MPLAD scheme, the government is taking away the expenditure which would have been attended to unique requirements of an area. This centralization goes against federalism development, will weaken our fight. First time MP Mahua Mitra of All India Trinamool Congress was too critical of the suspension. She described the move as a ploy to centralize power in her tweet, and she has also added that these funds are could have been used directly to serve each area. These are some scathing criticisms against the temporary suspension of the MPLAD scheme. However, contrary to this criticism, there are many experts who say that the suspension of MPLAD scheme for 2 years to boost the funding available for the COVID-19 fight is a step in the right direction. It may appear at the first instance that the decision may undermine the decentralized manner of funding the local area development. However, there also has been a persistent criticism about the scheme's very nature. The scheme also suffers from corruption and inefficiency due to the insufficient reporting and monitoring by the district administration and the central government. There has been widespread talk of money under MPLAD schemes being used to benefit contractors close to the local MPs. It has been pointed out that such contractors are often relatives, close friends of the MP, and such contractors and the MP are financially linked with each other. reports of underutilization, misutilization of MPLAD funds continue to surface at regular intervals. There have been innumerable instances of misuse of funds to construct many undesirable assets. It has also been noted that several instances that due to the lack of reporting and monitoring, several non-durable projects have been funded under MPLAD scheme. Then the CAG has also noted that in several cases, trusts and NGOs related to the family members of the MPs have been funded, giving rise to the corruption and favoritism. Then the next argument is, the next issue with MPLAD scheme is that it undermines the authority of the local government institution. It has been observed that MPLADs often encroaches the legitimate domain of the local government institutions, that is the panchayats for rural area and the municipalities for urban areas. We know the concept of the local self-government, that is the panchayats and municipalities, got constitutional recognition by the virtue of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. Before that, there was democracy at the state level, democracy at the central level, and bureaucracy at the local level. But unfortunately, sort of similar arrangement is continuing even today, even after the implementation of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, because these amendment acts do not define any relation between the bureaucrats and the elected representatives of the local self-government, that is the panchayat or municipalities. It leaves no option for the bureaucrats at the local level to accept the advice of the heads of the local government institutions. Generally, these bureaucrats, as they are appointed by the central government or the state government, listen to the MPs and the MLAs, not to the sarpanch, not to the councillors. Moreover, these local governmental institutions are always short of their financial autonomy. That's why it has been argued by many experts of democratic decentralization, that if local development planning has to be decentralized down to the level of the local level, the central government must consider reducing the volume of the centrally sponsored schemes. Central government must consider abolishing the schemes such as MPLAD, and the money should be given to the Panchayati Raj institutions and the urban local bodies instead, so that financial autonomy to some extent must be provided to them, so that they can come up with their own schemes. Because they are in the better position to define what's better for them, what's best for them, what's suitable for them. Instead, central government creating and starting a scheme at the central level and then pushing these schemes down to the throat of unwilling panchayats, unwilling municipalities, it will not lead to any benefit. Now there are some constitutional issues as well with the MPLAD scheme. Various commissions have observed that MPLAD scheme is unconstitutional because it violates the principle of federalism and the doctrine of separation of powers. This observation was first made by the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, which was headed by Justice Venkatachalaya, when it submitted its report in 2002. The same observation has been made later by the Planning Commission as well as by the Second Administrative Reforms Commission headed by Virappa Moily in its report on Ethics in Governance. According to these commissions, MPLAD scheme violates the principle of federalism because its pattern of funding bypasses the state governments and weakens the federal structure of the Constitution, which is a basic feature of the Constitution. Then these commissions have also felt that MPLAD scheme violates the doctrine of separation of powers because these schemes end up providing executive responsibilities to the legislature. See, the doctrine of separation of powers, which is again a basic feature of the Constitution, provides for a clear separation between legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. This commission have argued that by asking the MPs to get involved in the executive projects, the MPLAD scheme has blurred the division between the legislature and the executive. Later, in constitutional validity of MPLAD scheme was also challenged in the Supreme Court of India in 1999, followed by petitions 2000, 2003, 2004, 2005, and in 2010, ultimately, a constitution bench of the Supreme Court upheld the MPLAD scheme to be constitutional. The Constitutional Bench observed that MPLAD scheme does not violate the doctrine of separation of powers because it only allows the legislators to recommend the projects and not to take up execution or implementation of the project. The Supreme Court also noted that the funds are disbursed and allotted by the central government, and the execution, that is implementation of the project, is still carried out by the district executive. So since the role of the legislator is only to recommend a project, the Supreme Court felt that this scheme does not violate the doctrine of separation of power between the legislature and the executive. Though the Supreme Court of India has held the scheme to be constitutional, various experts argue that the Supreme Court seems to have overlooked the actual situation, the empirical reality prevalent on the field. Though the scheme is well intended, but the implementation has been far from satisfactory. And this necessitates a relook by the judiciary. So these are the various underlying issues, various concerns inherent in the very nature of the MPLAD scheme itself. However, it has also been observed that over the years, various MPs have supported the scheme as it allows them to serve their respective constituencies by carrying out micro-intervention and by promoting citizens' participation based on the local needs of the constituency. Though the scheme has had its share of criticism, but it has also been seen that better performing MPs of dynamic character, those who have positive intent, identify and fulfill local developmental needs with empathy and alacrity. There are many examples which illustrate that how a MPLAD fund can be successfully used by the elected representatives to serve the local needs through micro-interventions and targeted developmental projects, which can create durable assets for the constituency. So it can be concluded that like many other government schemes, MPLAD scheme has also had its share of success and failure. It is intent of the executive. It is actually the intent of the executive, that is the MPs, that is the MLAs and the bureaucrats, which ultimately prevails. So these are what you need to understand from this topic. I hope you are now in a position to craft an essay on this topic, MPLAD scheme, incorporating therein all the facts and analysis I have provided to you so far. So this concludes our discussion. Thanks for watching.